Welcome back. We're here. We're back on YouTube. I
We're
think
back
we
on
can get more
YouTube. I'm just
back
looking
on
for
YouTube.
noties. I'm so confused. Where are they?
Yeah. Well, we. I was a
They're not
little
used to
busy.
it.
I
They
was
fell
on
out of the.
sabbatical a little bit. I was doing a little sabbatical, and
Ah,
so
there we go.
I was doing a little less live, a little less live, a little
Side
more
quest, if you
on the
will.
side quest, a little bit on the side quest. But side quest seems to be completed, so I think we're good. Hmm. All right. Back to the grind. Hey, Noties, let me pull up my
There's
YouTube
some
video here.
noties. Jay, Brandon Brooks, Michael. It has
Yeah,
been a
we're back.
minute.
It's been a minute, but we're back. We're back. Expect us back at, I think 10:30 is going to be the new start time. I think we're talking about that internally here, doing a little more pre-production. There's some noties. Hey, 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 hey. People
Noti,
have
noti,
their
noti, noti, noti.
back in the game.
Sharp, Michael. Absolutely.
Yes,
J
sharpening the
Cal
blade.
is committing to being right on time.
Well, I don't know if that's ever going to be possible given
Uh-huh.
the nature
That's
of my commitments.
selfhood,
But
personhood.
it's trying to maintain being a daily broadcaster while being the CEO of two companies, side quests, and the general responsibility I have is not an easy thing to do. But I just decided today I am going hardcore. I'm going hashtag hardcore. I just reset my hours. I just told them you can book any meetings from 8:30 to 8:30. I'm just going back to 12-hour window for the next 6 months because I just think the headwinds in our business are so acute. I got to just work harder. I got to put more effort in. I was kind of punching out around 6:37 and I was starting at around 9:30. And I just need to get back 2 extra hours a day, maybe 3, because I got to raise this fund.
Mm-hmm.
I got to do this show. And I've got to do all the investment team meetings, and I've got inside.com. And it's just the hours in the day are not enough. So,
Yeah.
as my birthday yesterday is 52, you always give a little bit of thought. And I was like, you know what? I need to work harder. That's my birthday wish for myself.
It's to
And
work harder.
that basically was it. They were like,
Yeah.
hey, blow out the candles. And I was like, I enjoy my work.
You're like, I've enjoyed you, fam. I'm out.
I have like a window. I have like plenty of time with them. And, they're like, now they're going to gymnastics and fencing. And, they have
Yeah.
their own interests too. And, it's, I just decided I'm just going to work a little harder. I'm going to try for the next 6 months, putting in a little extra effort just because I think this double dip recession is going to be more acute than I thought. I thought there was a 20% chance of like serious and like 80% double dip, but we'll be fine. I'm now kind of falling into the more pessimistic camp, and I may flip my 80-20, like 20% chance of like an easy landing, 80% chance of it's going to get gnarly out there. I'm just watching some of our portfolio companies and getting the revenue reports from them. And then we obviously see earnings, and I think the earnings are getting hit massively. So the consumer, like we talked about yesterday, you called it early with the buy now, pay later stuff. Like that's a sign of the end of the road.
Yeah.
Because credit cards are maxed, your savings is dipping. What's left? Buy now, pay later. I feel like everybody's hanging one foot off the
Still
side of the cliff.
shopping. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you're when your toes are hanging over the edge of the cliff, and you're just like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stick one leg off the cliff, and it's like,
I'm still going to do this. Are the earnings? It's very interesting. Like, are the earnings bad? I feel like with the big tech earnings, it's been like, well, it's, and this is where you sort of, I think we have a tendency to talk ourselves into recessions in some ways.
Yeah.
And also they are real. And also this one, I 100% agree with you. Like it's going to go either way. I'm maybe like a little more 60-40, but I think that like the China situation can't be overstated.
Yeah.
And even a couple months ago, remember, I think I said this on the show, but I definitely put it in our group chat and I was like, what? There's no end game here that ends well for the global economy, because if China opens up, COVID through it like wildfire.
Yep. Correct.
And that is a massive disruption to the economy. And if China doesn't open up, it's a massive disruption to the economy. And
Correct.
so like either way, you have this huge blocker that is
Mhm.
unresolved. And I don't think gets resolved very well. So I think no matter what, if you include China in the economic equation and you have to, that's pretty rough. That's a rough situation. But it's
Yeah.
also just weird. But again, we keep going back to the paradoxes because the earnings, it's like, well, it grew 37% year over year, but that's not what analysts want. So the stock was down. It was like, yeah, but it grew 37% year over year. Or, like you're not seeing companies being like, we lost.
Yeah.
all
The
users.
top companies, like you're saying, those top companies had headwinds. So like you saw cloud for Amazon and Microsoft, it slowed, right? Still growing nicely, but it
Yeah.
slowed. So I think when people see the best tip of the spear companies slowing,
Right.
then they just sort of
Right.
extrapolate down. Okay, if the best slow down, it's like, okay, if Steph Curry goes from 31 points a game to 26, you're like, well, it's still 26 points a game, 27 points a game, but it's like,
But you're like, he
okay,
lost a leg.
yeah,
He's not okay.
He's not okay. Yeah. So I
Right.
think that's, yeah. People are like, Jake Cal looks exhausted today. You know what I did? Two
Thanks,
days
guys.
ago.
It's because we're on Restream. Seriously. You've been
It
watching
is
this
part of
video,
it.
you guys.
This isn't how my eyes
That's
normally
why I got to
look
keep
without
getting
makeup.
Botox because eventually we're going to go back to the world and not be on Zoom anymore. And I'm not going to look like my filter.
Yeah, whatever's left in the syringe. Let me get that. No, I decided I was going to up my fitness a little bit. So Casey Neistat, am I pronouncing that correct,
Oh, yeah.
producer Nick?
Neistat. I do it wrong every
I was
time.
pronouncing
Neistat.
Casey.
Neistat.
Neistat. So Casey reached out to me because his marathon trainer heard me on Tim Ferriss. His marathon trainer is like 54 years old, a couple years older than me, and he's setting all the records, or he's winning like the New York City Marathon. And he heard me. I had said just a throwaway comment. I'm thinking about doing another marathon. Haven't done one in 20 years. And so he reached out to me. Somehow Casey had my brother Josh, my firefighter brother, retired now, his phone number. So Josh says, this guy Casey Neistat is emailing me about running marathons. I think it's for you. Is this like a scam or something? And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know how Casey got my brother's phone number in his phone.
A lot of people have his phone number,
but a lot of people have brother Josh. If you need to, fix some things in New York,
you need a guy. He's a guy.
Josh is a guy.
He gets things done.
He gets things done. That's happens to be producer Nick's dad, my brother, my little brother, my baby bro. And so anyway, I decided, let me start running some sprints on my Peloton and let me start doing. I got back from Dallas and I was like a little exhausted from the Dallas trip. So then I thought, you know what I should do since I'm exhausted? I should try to set a record on my Peloton and my tonal in the same session. So I started doing sprints
in the same session.
The same day on Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
So Sunday afternoon, I just decided I would try to set a record for like each one of the weightlifting things. So I, like as I'm doing bench, I'm doing the tonal stuff. And man, I tell you, the second day after you do like hardcore weights and sprinting, that's the day. But Nick gave me the protein powder. I did like I did 70 grams of protein yesterday to try to recover. I'm going to try to do 100 today. And I'm just going hardcore.
That's a lot of protein, bro.
Yeah. They say I have to hit half to 100 if I want to really get ripped, because I'm doing my thirst trap this summer. I decided year one was to lose the 30. Year two of my year of fitness is going to be to do the thirst trap by next summer. But I'm told I have to do half to 100% of my weight, which is like 174 in protein grams. I don't know if that's true. I should definitely add some meditation. Anyway, getting focused.
And drink a lot of water because you're never going to poop again. Sorry.
That is can be a problem.
I don't mean to go right there. I did a 7:30 a.m. spin class today, actually.
You did?
Yep. I've never done a spin class in my life. One of my new friends.
How did you find it?
Teaching it. It was fantastic. It's like incredible endorphins. And I came away from it and I was like, you know what? I am in better shape than I think I am. And I need to push harder. And I think classes are probably the key to that. Like when you work out at home, I don't know. I don't find it. I've never been like a group class person, but I don't max on my own. So I think maybe it might be time to do some more of that. Felt great.
All right. So anyway, long way of saying, sorry if I look tired. I feel great. I have, this is the best shape I've been in 20 years. And the weightlifting is going pretty good. I'm like really starting to feel like much stronger. I feel stronger, but it is that like recovery times. I mean, if anybody has tips for recovery time, I'm looking for tips on how to shorten my recovery time. I've been doing collagen as well. So if there's like supplements or something I need to be doing, but yeah. What's that?
You have a hot tub?
No, I'm getting an infrared sauna put in though. This is one of the things I've been told is the sauna is
the sauna
really
is supposed
like
to be really good.
Yeah, so
I'm a big fan. I have the like $400 Coleman portable hot tub, which is freaking amazing. I will never upgrade to a real one because I'm like, this thing is awesome. But that and then the winter pool is like a polar plunge. And I
think I gotta
cannot
start doing that.
recommend that more highly. It is incredible. Like your whole body.
Do ice bath?
I don't do the ice bath, but I jump in the 60-degree pool. Like I go in the hot tub and soak, and then the pool right now is very cold.
Yes.
And I jump in there, and it is like astonishing how good your body feels. And then you like sit and rest for a minute, and you actually feel muscles release. And you want to like go to sleep. It's incredible as a kind of a recovery circuit, DIY spa situation. It's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I have a pool, and we don't really use it in the winter, and it's 60 degrees. That's the reason. So I'll just jump in the pool. That's cold enough, right?
I was going to get one of those semi-permanent covers. And then I was like, no, turns out you can use the pool year round for something.
I like it. So anyway, health as well, fitness, yada, yada. We're getting to it. All right. So let's do the show. And I'm going to start talking a little bit on the margins about the Twitter stuff, but I'm going to try to stay off of it so that people don't. Just so the noties know, obviously, like I was involved a little bit in the transition, but I'm kind of wrapping up my tour duty there. But I don't want, this reblogging phenomenon or aggregating phenomenon where people then use me as an attack vector or like pretend I speak for the company kind of thing. So I'm going to talk about some of this stuff, but please don't make it into a news story. I don't have an official role at Twitter. My friend bought the company. The end. Like, I don't speak for the company. I don't work at the company. Don't do that. It's funny though. Everybody's asked me to be on their podcast.
That's going to be a tough one. Like, you could try.
Well, I'm going to try. and see. We'll see if it works. Today will be the first time we do it. But here's the thing. I'm getting invited on a lot of podcasts. So here's my line. People are like, hey, Jake, I'd love to have you on my podcast. New York Times, Bloomberg. I'm like, yeah, I would love to come on. Just can't talk about Twitter or Elon. And then people are like, oh.
Crickets.
Yeah. So I'm like, no, I can totally come on tomorrow. Sometimes now I've increased the trial. I'm like, can totally come on tomorrow afternoon, 2 to 4 p.m. window, if that works for you. Can't talk about Twitter or Elon. And then they have to be like, oh, well, we'd love to have you on, but we have to cover the Twitter stuff right now. So can't have, but maybe another time. And I'm like, gotcha. So you want me on for one reason. Fair enough. Got it.
Yeah.
All the stuff I'm doing doesn't register with
like,
you.
nah.
Investing in 100 companies a year, 2 of the top 5 tech podcasts in the world. Yeah, none of that matters. Just need me as a surrogate. Got it. Okay, good.
Yeah, producers. Producers are an ugly bunch.
Yeah, it's
mercenaries.
But I know how I just get
you got to respect it. At least they're like, oh, never mind. Peace out.
Oh, I get complete joy out of doing it though. It's just like, it's a reverse troll. All right. So here we go. Let's start the show.
Speaking of trolls.
Okay. 3, 2. All right, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Startups. It's Tuesday. How you doing, Molly?
It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday.
It is just Tuesday. I know it feels like
really?
Feels like second Thursdays.
We're like living every day twice here.
It feels like second. It feels like we're doing like the 5th show of the week, 6th show of the week, because the news just does not stop. Starting out today, I don't know if you saw, there was a little back and forth between my pal Elon and Apple, just over Apple's advertising on Twitter and the App Store. And I had tweeted back and forth about this on the Twitter. Elon said Apple has also threatened to withhold Twitter from its App Store, but they won't tell us why, yada, yada. And I just tweeted, hey, I wonder what I missed, and put a little Tim, because we were on the pod yesterday, and Elon responded to me and said something to the effect of a revolution against online censorship in America. So Yeah, there's a back and forth about the App Store rules and who gets into the App Store. And we talked about this before. Putting aside, Elon's my friend and he bought Twitter. I do think that this is like going to become one of the issues of our time. Is this duopoly in the App Store? And I think that Apple, and this predates Elon buying Twitter, but I have been saying for a couple of years now, Apple should allow you to have alternate app stores if you press a button, like in your settings, like I take ownership of my phone, because there is something to be said for the role of the App Store in vetting apps and making it a delightful experience. Like with my kids, I don't know about how you feel about it. I like the fact that the App Store is doing some sort of vetting process, because I don't want them to load spyware or something like that. And when I'm on an Android phone, you get a lot of spyware and weird apps and that kind of stuff. But I also would like to be able to load apps on my phone in the same way I do on my desktop, which is I can go through the Apple App Store, or Windows has an App Store, or you can just load stuff directly if you want to assume that risk. And there is some risk to it, right? But the interesting thing that happened in this tweet storm was, guess who showed up? Rich Miner showed up, who, for people who don't know, is one of the co-founders of Android.
Yep. And said, it's not so simple. Had there been multiple app stores on Android and iOS, it would have been a major point of friction for app distribution and adoption. You would never have had apps, or smartphones for that matter, grow so quickly, and app developers would not have been so successful.
What's your take on that?
I mean, I think that's true. And also we have a duopoly in phones that's bad for consumers. And that's not new.
Yeah.
The only thing that's hard for me about this conversation is the idea that we're just discovering that, or at least one person in that Twitter thread is just discovering this now.
Yeah.
Because this is obviously a long-standing and ongoing issue. Amazon has been fighting with Apple about the 30% take on in-app purchases. Epic, of course, sued Apple over this. It's been a point of contention for, I think Spotify had a lot to say for a lot of years about Apple and
Netflix.
Its take, and Netflix and all of that. And so I think we're in a situation where both of these things are true, actually, that smartphones were brand new, that app stores were a reliable discovery and delivery mechanism, and that Apple's rules in particular protected consumers and also let developers make a crap ton of money. We all remember that particular moment in time in the Bay Area where everybody that you talked to was an app developer. Every Uber driver, every waiter. It was like how when you're in LA, everybody's an aspiring actor and writing a screenplay.
Yeah.
But in the Bay Area, everybody was writing an iOS app because you could make a lot of money that way. And so it was it's a double-edged sword.
And I think it's instructive. And to confirm your point there, here's Spotify's policy for a long time. Spotify has just said, listen, you're not going to use, you can make that 3 times bigger maybe. If you currently pay for Premium with Apple's in-app payment system, it's easy to switch to subscribe direct with us. So they discontinued this, and they're just telling people, hey, cancel. Don't go through the store. Come to the website, sign up, and then just log in with your credentials. Yeah. This creates unnecessary friction.
It does.
I understand why.
You cannot buy a Kindle book on the Amazon app on iOS.
You still can't?
You have to go. You still can't, because they were like, no, we're not giving away that 30%.
Yeah. And so Audible, somehow they came to some agreement, and now Audible, you can order an audiobook inside the Audible app. So that changed
with the credit, because you do the credit system that you've already paid for somewhere else, either through your subscription or having purchased it. Yeah.
Explaining that to me.
The credit thing is how they get around it.
Oh, so you bought.
I mean, look, there's ways around, but to our point, there are ways around Apple's 30% fee. You just tell people you have to sign up and pay on the web.
Right. Which is kind of lame.
You don't have to pay it. Sure, it's lame, but you don't have to pay it. I mean, this is such a weird feeling, because I think it's like a bad faith jihad on the one side, and on the other side, the duopoly is bad for consumers and has been for a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, there is also the issue of, should the App Store be deciding what? Let's just widen the discussion here, so I don't get aggregated. But if you're a publishing platform, Medium, Blogger, Twitter, any other publishing platform where people are publishing their words, does the App Store need to get involved in policing what gets published on those? And that is a big question, I think. Yeah. And
It's
so,
always been the question. I mean, it's, you
yeah,
know, and nobody, it's always been the question. Everything is content. And the reason that people, you know, I mean, Apple is very puritanical, like very.
yes,
I mean, if
no
you think
adults,
about the weird
content.
media world that we live in some
Mhm.
ways, it's because of Apple. And somebody was saying the other day, they think Steve Jobs personally wrote the rules about nudity in the App Store. Like there won't ever be any, you know,
He did say that, yeah.
and it was never a monopoly before. Like now Apple is to the point in market share where it's not a monopoly technically.
The duopoly.
It is we live in a duopoly,
Yeah.
and it's
But when you say duopoly, it's essentially a monopoly, right? Two people controlling something, one person controlling it. It's too few.
yeah, it's terrible. We have
It's too few.
we have the same thing with like broadband. We have the same thing with health insurance. We have the same thing with, you know, it's all like it's all of an anti-competitive piece, no question, and the kind I have been ranting about for like a decade.
Yeah. And so I think Rich makes a really good point here, just continuing on. And
Yeah.
I agree that the app stores did help because as I responded back to him, listen,
Yeah.
people forget how fragmented things were. In the early days of apps, you had to do a deal with carriers, handset manufacturers. And so you would have to get HTC, Nokia to put your app on their phone, or Verizon, or both. It was a mishmash of agreements you had to do. And it was
Mhm.
essentially like a triopoly. I made that word up. I don't
Mhm.
know that that's exactly a word. But the carriers, Verizon, AT&T, and usually there was like 1/3 one that made up a significant portion of, like T-Mobile. I think it kind of switched to as number 3. But you had to get their permission. People forget this, but that's how you had to go to each of them. So my friend Gordon Gould had created a company called UPOC, which was kind of like the original Twitter. It was like an SMS, group chat kind of situation. They had to do deals, and they had to pay to get coverage. So the way it worked was you had to go give AT&T and Verizon money up front to allow people to have the app, or you paid per install. So I thought it'd be instructive to play the clip of Steve Jobs announcing the App Store. People forget,
Yeah.
Steve announced this and he had to sell it. Even Steve Jobs had to sing for his supper. He had to sell developers on doing this.
Mhm.
And so thanks to the exceptional producers here, hardworking and innovative as they are on This Week in Startups, for pulling this clip.
The App Store is going to be the exclusive way to distribute iPhone applications directly to every iPhone user. Now, developers are going to ask, well, this is great, but what's the deal, right? What's the business deal? We think we've got a great business deal for our developers. First of all, the developer picks the price. Pick whatever price you want to sell your app at. When we sell the app through the App Store, the developer gets 70% of the revenues right off the top. We keep 30% to pay for running the App Store. There are no credit card fees for the developer. We take care of all that. There are no hosting fees for us hosting the app. We take care of all that. There's no marketing fees. The developer gets 70% of the revenues, and it's paid monthly. This is the best deal going to distribute applications to mobile platforms. Now, we talk about the 70-30 revenue split, but the developer gets to pick the price. And you know what price a lot of developers are going to pick? Free, right? So when a developer wants to distribute their app for free, there is no charge for free apps at all. There's no charge to the user, and there's no charge to the developer. We're going to pay for everything to get those apps out there for free. The developer and us have the same exact interest, which is to get as many apps out in front of as many iPhone users as possible.
All right, Molly, what sticks out to you in this
I mean,
14-year-old video,
This is
2008?
from 2008.
I
God.
missed it.
This is like how I grew up in the tech industry, is watching Steve Jobs. I mean, literally like one of the my first job in tech media was with a magazine that covered Apple. And one of my first assignments was an Apple keynote where Steve Jobs unveiled the iMacs with color, like the Bondi blue one,
Oh, yeah,
and the iMac
sure.
DV. Yeah, I cannot get over then and now, like, developers clapping at like, why would there ever be a charge on a free app? They're just like, "Oh, wait, my app that I made for free and
Yeah.
distributed on your store to make your platform better,
Yeah.
you won't charge me to do that? Thank you!" Like, that
Right.
cult is as strong as ever. It's amazing.
And you know, that is in
Amazing.
reaction to the fact, as I mentioned before we played the clip, that you had to pay to get carriers to
Right.
put your app on. So there were
Right.
these gatekeepers. So we went from gatekeepers who were charging even for a free app to come out. Then we
Totally.
moved to a duopoly that did make things better. There was standardization. There was marketing, as he points out. You get to
Mhm.
be in there. You get to, you know, people can find you. There's no hosting fees. He pointed that out. They used to
Yeah.
charge you to host your
I mean,
app,
it was
right?
a freaking great deal, just like the 99-cent song download, like, it
Yes.
was the best deal going.
14 years ago.
100%. 14 years ago. And it doesn't mean right? It's sort of like, just because it was a great deal then doesn't mean it's a great deal now, especially when there
Yes.
are far fewer options. I mean, you remember, like, 5 minutes after this Windows Phone came out, we thought there might
Mhm.
actually be another platform. BlackBerry still existed. It was not a
Yep.
duopoly then. There was competition,
Yes.
and
And here
now
we are.
there is not. Like, the entire
Mhm.
history of
Yeah.
American capitalism as we experience it right now is anti-competition.
Yeah, and this is where, you know, I think Lena Khan can be, you know, since she does have strong feelings about future competition. We talked about this on the show. She wants to preserve future competition. We want to preserve future competition in the world. You know, I was trying to think of where I see the most anti-competitive behavior. For me, it's App Store is number one. And then I felt like some of these house brands, you know, that Amazon was doing was kind of felt icky to me the way they were doing it, because they had people's information, data, and they could, you know, then do
Yeah.
that. And even the social networks, I think, you know, owning people's data or graphs and not having an ad-free version available where you could pay to opt out of advertising. Some of these things felt like sort of, and a Google search, putting ads above and organic stuff above search, which Google has faced headwinds in Europe about. So I feel like it's a small subset of things, but they're very hard to go after Google, very hard to go after Apple. It's easier to go after like acquisitions, like Lena Khan has done. The other
Well,
thing
yeah,
I'll point out,
but
go ahead,
because
Molly.
within the confines of existing monopoly law,
Yep.
like, Apple's not, its behavior might be anti-competitive, but it's not illegal because it's
Right.
not an illegal monopoly. And so this is where, like,
Yeah.
there's some stuff that Lena Khan may or may not be able to do. And I hate, like, making it all about this one human. You know, like, you should go after this instead of this and whatever. There's still the confines of the law and existing regulation. And what really needs to happen actually is that Amy Klobuchar bill that
Mhm.
sort of has been languishing, but might actually get pushed through in the next legislative session, which would actually, because we have to, like, if we don't figure out how to define antitrust to include a situation where there's a duopoly and both players engage in anti-competitive behavior, because right now the law doesn't cover that. It just flat out doesn't.
I think you just made an excellent point that I was sort of about to punch up, which is, why don't we just change monopoly law to duopoly? And we say, if any two parties have the majority of a space, that is something that should be treated as acute. That should be something that's treated the same as a monopoly or
Mhm.
close to it. And so if you're in a duopoly, Windows, Mac, Android, Android and iOS, Facebook's collection of social media assets, and TikTok, maybe. If you put those two together, is it a duopoly? I'd have to look at the numbers because you have so many other social networks.
Sorry,
But I think,
AWS and oh, sorry, you were on social networks. I was looking up the Amy Klobuchar bill.
well, no, AWS plus Google
Plus
Cloud plus Azure.
Microsoft.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wonder if
Google's like the
AWS,
far third. I think
yeah,
AWS and Azure are considered effectively a duopoly, and then
maybe
Google is sort of a
on a
distant
percentage
third.
basis. I wonder what percentage of cloud hosting they are. I think actually they're probably combined less than 60, 70%. So it's
Google and
probably,
Azure or
if you
AWS
put the
and
two
Azure.
together, do they equal 80%, 85%, let's say? If you put the top two players together, do they hit 85%? If you have any one player, are they more than 75%? That's where
Mhm.
I would put it as, like, this is having an impact. If you look at search, Google clearly has over 75% in almost every market. And if you look at cloud computing, it probably doesn't equal 85%. If you look at handset manufacturers, it definitely is 90%, 95, maybe 95% Android plus iOS. A couple of other notes about this presentation. How charming is it that it looks like it's being done in the Marriott, and
I know.
there's like 50 people in the audience.
There's
It's like a
50
row.
people.
It's like 10 people.
Hmm.
And Steve is like, and it's a one camera shoot. I don't know if you noticed that, but like,
Oh yeah. They
they're
had to,
like moving the camera to
zoom
follow
in.
Steve. And they're like, Steve, no, stay behind the podium. He's like, fuck that. I'm not, oh, sorry. He's like, F that. I'm not staying behind the podium.
Which is so
I'm
weird.
gonna
Like
wander.
that was the age of like big fancy presentations. It must have just been like kind of a small developer thing.
I think this is
I think this
kinda
is
when
pre WWDC.
maybe
Like he
yeah,
would
and
have the big consumer shows,
Yes.
right? Announce that because the iPhone had been announced the prior year. So
I think
that
that's
developer
what
community like barely even existed then. It probably was 50 people
Yeah.
developing
Yeah.
for iOS. That's
Actually, just got a
crazy.
note from our exceptional producers. AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud are 66% of the cloud computing market together.
Oh, all three
So
together. Okay.
all three together. Yeah. See, I think it's pretty
Because there's
fragmented.
Oracle. Yeah, there still
Yeah.
is some.
Yeah. There's a long
Alibaba
tail
Cloud.
of 1, 2, 3% players, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it could become, and so it's something to monitor, right?
And there's probably things like yes to duopoly 100%. Every time, I mean, the duopoly it's a stranglehold. There's no doubt about it. But there are also potentially regulations and new laws that can be introduced that actually impact behavior as opposed to market size, right? And that's the question is like, is your behavior anti-competitive and harmful
Yes.
potentially regardless of your market share? Or even if your market share, I think Apple, in the US is like 56%, we decided, but it still should. I just cannot help but find it ironic that for years and years and years and years and years, journalists have been saying this and privacy advocates and, like, sorry, but Elizabeth Warren. And all of a sudden, some folks in the tech industry care about this industry that they never cared about before. And I'm like,
the issue is becoming for venture capitalists, I think, an issue as well for investors, because it does feel like the App Store now is a blocker for, for companies, for startups specifically. Don't forget, though, Tumblr got removed at some point from the App Store. In 2018, I think they had some CSAM issues, to use the acronym. You can look it up yourself.
ew.
Yeah.
Sorry,
They
I
had
just figured
CSAM
it out.
issues. Yeah, I don't want to say
Yeah.
the actual words
No.
here.
Mm-mm.
But so the App Store is like a backstop against companies not doing their own policing, or at least Apple's is, where they will, because I think they also took down Parler at some point, the right wing MAGA
Gab,
kind
I
of
think,
platforms.
yeah.
And so this is where it's going to get super interesting. At what part of the stack are you immune, or it's not your responsibility? It's, the other person's responsibility. I think Google probably takes a lighter hand with this, and Steve Jobs' legacy was always to take a more firm hand.
Absolutely.
some
I
of
mean,
these
they were the
things.
original content moderators.
Yeah.
Like in many, many ways, Apple is the original content moderators. They were like, we will control, and it is their legacy of control. They're like, we will control every single aspect of your experience here, and you will love it. You will love it. And for a long time, people did.
Yeah. Google removed Parler following the January 6th Capitol attacks. That was,
I think Apple did they?
I think so. Yeah, I think they got booted everywhere. And so this is like, I think, going to be one of the discussions as well.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, they did. And so this is, I think, going to become one of the, there's parallel issues here. One is like the VIG is 30% too much. 2 is consumer choice. Is this reducing consumer choice? And then 3 is, hey, like, are you policing your platform enough for our taste? And then this is going to require, I think, given the political environment we're in, I think we're going to have more transparency of exactly why, a social platform is banning people or not banning people. And then the app platforms being more transparent. Here's why we're blocking this, social platform or publishing platform. And then those two things are going to we're just going to have a little more disclosure of why people are doing what they're doing. And then, at least consumers can understand, like, okay, Tumblr allows adult content the App Store bans it, but Google Play allows it, or, it's allowed in certain app stores or not. Just a little more transparency would be good here. And then appeals process as well.
I think that exists, doesn't it? Apple also, we should note that Apple did, under some of this pressure last year, change its cut to 15% for developers who make less than $1 million in annual sales per year.
Yeah, I think you have to apply for that. Yeah. Perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, they said that would be the vast majority of iOS app developers.
Yeah.
Also, the App Store makes crap tons of money. Like, look, there's stuff that I've been complaining about Apple doing for almost 20 years, right? Like the thing where they charge you for dongles and they use the proprietary standards. And it's very interesting. I don't know. It's like,
yeah,
everything is fine when you're tiny and everybody loves you. Scale is what, makes it the problem.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the app stores have been opaque about their choices. I think if something is removed or not approved, it should be transparent. Like they should have, just like Google is very transparent about when they get subpoenas, they have that like web page where you can go see, hey, here's who's asking for information on your user account and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Google, just so we read the policy here, all apps on Google Play that feature user-generated content, UGC, are required to implement robust moderation practices that prohibit objectionable content, provide an in-app system for reporting objectionable UGC. So that's interesting. In-app, it has to be. Take actions against the UGC where appropriate and remove or block abusive users who violate the app's terms of service. Terms of use under a user policy. So that's not Google's terms of service, but they're saying you have to have a policy for abusive users and you have to, I guess, execute on it. And I guess people have to understand that.
Yeah.
And so here is I'll give you the link if you guys want to put it in the show notes, but it's kind of interesting that we're now hitting this moment in time, I think, where this is going to become a major issue.
It's been interesting to see who has skated under the enforcement radar, right? Like you look at all the times that Sundar and Mark Zuckerberg were called before Congress, and it's because their bad behavior was less welcomed by consumers, right? Like Apple has benefited for a decade of kind of like big tech backlash from having everybody love them. And Microsoft, I think, has benefited from being really boring, even though both of them are engaged in very similar behaviors. And Apple is building up an unbelievable data moat. Like you look at, if you look at data as an antitrust issue, and it is, Apple has an incredible data moat that nobody's really talking about. And so I think it's actually going to be really interesting to see if Apple is vulnerable at this moment of kind of realization of all the various ways that we're being controlled, or that these companies control our interactions.
Yeah. I just love the idea. It's a very simple solution that I think sometimes there are very simple solutions to this that the Justice Department, the FTC, regulators could just fall back on for consumer choice. And I think these are in the best interest also of the people who have duopolies or monopolies. I've given two very specific examples over the years that still have not been implemented. If I own an iPhone or an Android, you can do this pretty easily. Having to jailbreak it is lame, right? Like that sucks. You're constantly then having to wipe your phone, reload it. You're all of a sudden like you're driving a 1970 Mustang where you have to change the carburetor and spark plugs yourself. Like, now it's like your hobby, right? It's going to be 100 hours a year of this nonsense. Why not just have a button inside your settings that say, I would like to sideload apps. I would like to load apps. And I understand that this breaks my warranty for the software. I don't get to get tech support or whatever. And if I click that button, I'm just assuming some amount of risk. Apple could very easily implement this. So if I want to load the Epic Games or Spotify directly or Kindle directly and work with them directly, and just go to, spotify.com/iPhone, and it allows me to download the apps directly from them that might have features that Apple doesn't agree with. Let's say adult content, right? Or more risque
Which is
content.
my right.
Which is my right. Like if I want to have Tumblr and Tumblr's got some, stuff on it, or OnlyFans wants to have an app. I don't know if OnlyFans has an app. That's a good question. Or I want to do gambling, right? I want to load casinos, or I want to load some wallet that, is a crypto wallet or a gambling app. I should just have the right to do it.
The Apple nanny state. Exactly. Just like, let me. Yeah.
Let me. And then for Facebook, just having I'll pay you $8 a month, $12 a month, whatever it is. Do not track any of my information. Do not save any of my data.
Yeah.
The end. These would be common sense solutions. And I think that's where politicians, if they're listening, could really actually settle this with duopolies or monopolies.
I also, honestly, I am excited about a possibility where the market solution for this is the mobile web. Remember when the mobile web was going to be how you accessed everything? And then everybody was like, well, I can get a lot more data from you if I make you download my app.
Yeah.
And Apple was like, I can make a lot more money if everybody downloads apps and buys stuff within the app. Like, literally, we had a decentralized, censorship resistant solution for this.
Yes.
And it was the freaking browser.
Yes. And
apps ruined everything.
Apps are delightful and faster and snappier than the mobile web, I guess. And so,
only
it's
because
easier.
That's just developer attention, right? Like it doesn't have to be that way. It's because they build for app first.
Yeah, exactly.
Build for the mobile web and then keep all your money and let me, I'm just saying.
Well,
I was all for it. HTML5, let's go.
Speaking of Google, somebody tweeted the number of employees per department from, I think it was the information. I don't know where they got the data from, if it's available and if Google discloses it, but I was just shocked in this chart at the small number of people who work inside of YouTube. Now, these numbers here, if you look at the chart, show each division. So you have like Nest and you have YouTube, you got Android, you got search and assistant that's kind of bundled together, and the head count basically for each of those divisions. Now, I'm also told that these numbers, like there might be some centralization of like some YouTube functions might be in the cloud portion of these numbers, right?
Right. There's probably some economies of scale that happen.
Like the data.
Platform, multi-brand, right? Like the data.
Yeah. So like YouTube might not.
Like I'm sure sales and partnerships, that covers it all. That's not just like one part.
The YouTube sales and partnership numbers and the cloud computing numbers are probably listed under cloud and sales and partnerships, which are the biggest numbers here on the chart. 50,000 plus people in cloud, 30,000 people in sales and partnership. But then only 6,000 people in YouTube. Anyway, if we were to even, double that number, it's still super impressive when you look at it. And I think we're having this moment in time where people are saying, well, how many people do you actually need to run these divisions, and the bloat in tech, and I guess a bunch of hedge funds saying, hey, maybe get a little bit smaller and be more profitable in the down market. But I just thought YouTube was the standout here for me on the chart. They have 30 billion in revenue in 2022 with around 7,500 direct employees. It's 4 million per employee. If you were to double if they had other employees, it'd still be 2 million per. But that reminded me of really the GOAT in all of this. Craigslist had over 1 billion in revenue in 2019 with only 50 employees. So if y'all are looking at how efficiently can a tech company be run, Craigslist is actually the one that people forget about. Now, of course, Craigslist looks the exact same as it did 25 years ago. They do not. I mean,
nope,
it's comical.
Has not changed it. I don't think, does Craigslist have an app? I don't even think they have an app. They're just like, yeah, no, it's the web, guys. We're just using the mobile web.
If those numbers are holding, and listen, Craigslist could have more revenue now because it's 3 years later. It could be 2 billion. It could be 1.5 billion. And they could have double the number of employees. But anyway, if we just take the two numbers we do have and triangulate it, and I've heard these are directionally correct, it's 20 million per employee. I mean, my Lord, the efficiency of this website is just unbelievable.
What's interesting about this is that the information story started as a piece about Google dramatically increasing its headcount between 2019 and 2022.
Yeah.
And though that chart comparison, I don't know if we can pull that up, but it's pretty astonishing actually, and shows how much Google has been plowing into cloud. Like that bar goes from, I'm looking at the information story right now, like 25,000 employees in 2019 to 52,000 employees by 2022, which makes you wonder if the like revenue, speaking of revenue per employee, has been commensurate. Like they've plowed money and they're trying to catch up with Azure and AWS.
Yes.
But it does make you wonder if like people alone was the right thing to throw at this. I don't know.
Who knows?
They're still kind of a distant third.
We have a limited amount of information in terms of how these are broken up, but the overall trend has been take people off the market.
Craigslist does have an app. Sorry.
Yeah,
I had no idea. That's
I know
adorable.
they spent years stopping people from. They've had a really aggressive approach, which I don't think is unwarranted, by the way, of not letting people scrape their data. A lot of startups I know will pitch me on like, we made an app, we scraped this data from here. And I'm like, you're going to get a letter from Craig Newmark. Like, I wouldn't do that. Like the second your app becomes popular, you have to respect their terms of service and their data. They don't want it shared. You don't have the right to share it. And then there were many people who created Craigslist apps, to kind of scrape it or wrap it in some ways. This chart of Alphabet and Meta and the total employee counts are just extraordinary, obviously. And Google still has not announced a RIF, but they have announced performance reviews.
Yeah.
And Facebook did say they're going to get rid of 10,000 people. So I think these lines will go sideways. If you're looking at them, they're just up and to the right, incredible amount of hiring. I wonder if the right thing to do is ignore Wall Street, let your stock crash, and just take all this talent off the market. I mean, if you're Google, and ignore to the extent you can, with your Google said they're going to slow hiring. I wonder if that is the move, is to just ignore anybody giving you advice and just keep spending.
Because the thing is,
crazy.
There was a really good piece actually that I saw not that long ago that was basically like, layoffs are our old guard mistake. It was like, everybody always does this. Yeah, it was in Bloomberg. And it was like, everyone always does this when there's a downturn.
Yeah.
You lay off to save money. But the thing is that in a downturn, I have been having this exact conversation with a friend of mine who's like a bigwig, at a company under a lot of pressure to do a lot of layoffs. Yeah. And she's like, yeah, but we need to build, we need a new product layer in order to take us into the future. Right. And now is the time to do it. But if we lay everybody off, we are literally not going to have the human capital to be able to do it. So and then when we come out of this, we're going to have to hire and restaff. We will have lost institutional knowledge. Hiring is super expensive. Severance is super expensive. And so you put yourself in this like weird flywheel of assuming that you must have overhired, and that was a mistake, but you're definitely right to lay off now. That's not a mistake. And it's like, well, wait a second. Maybe both of these things are some version of a mistake.
Yeah, overhiring. And as I tweeted the other day, I think we are now in the end of excess and entitlement and going into austerity and exceptionalism. Like the pressure is now going to be on everybody to perform in a down market. And when I said this, I was very clear. I was talking about VCs, management teams, and founders. Of course, people are saying like, well, what about the employees? You hate the employees. I was actually saying the opposite. I think if an employee, I don't know how many times I have to say this to how many people, if an employee gets free lunch, who gave them the free lunch? If the employee gets, I don't know, unlimited vacation or whatever, this was something that was created by Google, copied by everybody. It became the management standard. And maybe people went too far with it, and maybe it did create entitlement in the employee class. But this started with VCs, the most entitled group of people in the world. And then founders, also super entitled, and management teams, also super entitled. The entitlement came top down, not bottom up. Employees would have brown bagged it like we all did 20 years ago. Nobody asked for Neiman Ranch steaks. Google provided them. I remember this because I went to Google one time and they were like Neiman Ranch steak. And I was like, didn't I just have that at like a 5-star Michelin restaurant or a 2-star Michelin restaurant? Like, you have Neiman Ranch steaks at Google? It's not the employee's fault. This is straight on the heads of management. And now, it's the painful process of reversing some of this. Snap told staff with 90 days notice, assume default in person. I don't know if you saw that headline. How do you think that's going to go, Molly?
80% of the time, not great. Not great. Like when
How is that going to go for Evan Spiegel?
I'm doing an event with the Aspen Institute about work, future of work stuff.
Fancy, and stunning.
It was pretty stunning, I have to admit. I was like, oh, finally. It's not in Aspen or anything, but
Yeah.
Oh, stunning, Molly. Wait a second. Have you been to the Aspen Institute and stayed at those apartments on their campus?
No, I never have.
I got invited there.
That's why I'm making friends out here. That's why I'm out here making friends.
The Aspen Institute. That's high living. I got, you know who's part of that? The guy who wrote, who's the guy who hates tech, who wrote Winners Take It All? Anand Giradillis.
Giradillis. I feel terrible about this because I always say it wrong and I always skip an entire syllable.
I'll just say Anand right now and apologize for. I like
practice. His writing a lot. He just wrote the whole book about finding common ground.
I got to read that. Oh yeah. But anyway, my favorite part of his book was he's like, I was like a Aspen Institute fellow flying on billionaires' private jets, and then I realized I hated the industry and I blame them. But oh my Lord, Nick Denton and I did a fireside chat at this Aspen Institute in the summer. And I was hanging out. I made friends with all these celebrities. I was hanging out with this woman from the L Word. We were everybody staying in these like beautifully designed apartments on campus. They're feeding you. Gorgeous. You're walking through the Aspen Woods, man. You got to get in on that.
Fingers crossed, man. Aspen Fingers crossed. I know. That's why I'm like,
that's good living. Aspen.
That's why I'm pretty stoked. Living. I'm starting small, and then next. But anyway, the point of that is that the thing is about work, making the economy work for everybody. The future of work. It was this whole conversation too about productivity and care work and like flexibility and older workers and all the things that kind of contribute to people leaving the workforce or not working very hard. And it was really funny because it was like, oh yeah, it turns out all the stuff that happened in the pandemic, in some cases, makes work more accessible for more people, right? Yes. Like you get help, financial help for finding care. You get flexibility, which like 70 or 80% of workers want. Some flexibility, right? To work from home. You get
100% want it. Yeah. I mean
100%
who doesn't want flexibility. Yeah.
But also like the Harvard Business Review was like, productivity went way up when people worked from home, way up.
Well, they couldn't go out at night because of COVID. Remember that. You weren't allowed to go out and go to a restaurant.
Sure. But you also didn't commute. You worked more hours. Like people worked more hours. I mean, yes, there was nothing else to do. And so it'll be interesting to see how that normalizes. But now they're starting to be like, when we brought some people back to the office and put them back in that open floor plan that doesn't work for anybody, then their productivity went down. So now you see these companies that are attempting to kind of blunt force reverse all of the trends of the past 3 years in ways that are very likely to lead to employees being like burned out and or less productive or being like, I don't want to go. Like I had everything I needed to kick ass at my job.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to take that all away and also tell me to work harder. And it's people are like, I'm not sure.
I'll tell you what's happening here.
Not sure.
I'll tell you what's happening.
Not sure. I don't think that's entitlement.
I'll tell you what's happening here. He wants to do another riff. He wants to do a loyalty test. He wants to go hardcore. And so he's like, okay, you know what? We're losing. The stock market doesn't believe in my leadership anymore. Maybe I'm sitting courtside at too many Warriors games. I'm not just saying,
and not even having fun.
Not even like, I mean, he is, restrained.
Maybe he just has fun on the inside. He screams inside his heart.
Exactly. But here's the thing. He has gotten his ass kicked by the stock market. The stock market believes he's asleep at the wheel. They believe he's lost his edge. They don't want to buy his stock. When your stock gets pummeled to this level, at some point, and this is the back channel, I'm going to give you the secret back channel with CEOs, board members of these companies, etc. Secret back channel is that now the leadership, the CEOs, I'm going to talk about the CEO class like Evan Spiegel. They are realizing if they get everybody back to work and they lay off people who in some cases, maybe they don't like working with to begin with, the more they do that, the more their personal net worth goes up. So that's how crazy things have changed for CEOs. They were rewarded last year for hiring people and going for growth. This year, they're being rewarded for laying off people, demanding people come back to the office, and showing profits. And so, it is the biggest swing I've ever seen in the history of tech in terms of operating philosophies. But he's just doing this because if his stock was going up right now, he would not be doing this. But he's got to try something. Just like Zuckerberg finally bent the knee and was like, I'll cut 10,000 people. Fine. I'll bend the knee. That's what the stock market wants. We'll see if Google bends the knee. But, there's ultimately, it's like that Bob Dylan song, you got to serve somebody. These CEOs are now realizing like they can't have their stock be on the floor. It's going to affect their personal net worth. It's going to affect morale. And it's going to affect their ability to have cash to invest in products. So
yeah,
that's why he's doing it.
Sucks to be the people.
Just
like it always does.
Well, I mean, I think probably the rest of the world, like people, this is what I love on certain social networks when these things happen. People are like, oh my God, people who are truck drivers or, work in retail or on a farm or in a factory are like, oh, you have to go back to an office 4 days a week and eat free food. I'm sorry, so this is the cultural battle of our time. Important to recognize two things. One, the CEOs created this entitlement. The CEOs created this culture. Full stop. Number two, if their stock prices weren't collapsed, they wouldn't be doing this.
They wouldn't change a thing. Yeah.
They wouldn't change a thing. I have now come to the conclusion that there are three groups of people, Molly. And I have the actual numbers. I have done the analysis. There are three groups of people. There are people who work harder and better and are more productive from home. There are people who are more productive. There are people who are equally productive. And there are people who are less productive. It turns out, Molly, based on my deep analysis and research,
everyone is the same.
Correct.
Yes.
This is breaking news. Not everybody's the same. And I actually did the statistics, and the numbers came out irrefutable and perfectly round. First time in history.
Amazing.
20% of people are more effective working from home.
Yeah.
20% of people are equally productive at home, as in an office. Mm-hmm. And exactly down to 2 decimal points, 60.00% in my very astute analysis and detailed, are less productive from home.
60%?
60% are less productive from home. Now, I know it's hard to believe because you're
to
part of the top 20%. You're a part of the top 20%. So you can't imagine.
I'm just saying Harvard Business Review came up with exactly the opposite numbers. So
during I'm just the pandemic, now that people can go out and YOLO and go out at night, there is a full 60.00001%. It's a little, it's about 5 zeros. You start to see the differences. Those people are the ones, the 60%. And now, listen, in your company, it might be 40, but you can. I'm just looking at it in my analysis. Those are the people ruining it for everybody else. Those 60% who are quiet quitting or overemployed and working 2 jobs or doing side hustles or effing around so they find out, those are the people who are screwing it up for everybody. So you have 2 choices. We have but 2 choices. One, you need to get those people out of the company so the other 40% become 100 as a manager, or you're going to do the gentleman's riff like Evan Spiegel is doing and doing default together. That's it. That's where we've come to. Remote work don't scale. It's too hard to scale. That's, I think, what people are learning.
So you think 60% of people were definitely working nonstop 8 hours a day, just killing it at the
8
office.
hours.
10 hours
Oh
a
no,
day,
I don't
whatever
think
you
that. I
think
don't
they
think
were.
that.
Right.
I think
I'm just
it
saying,
was.
I don't think
Yeah.
anything changed. I don't think,
Who's
I
working
mean,
8 hours? 8 hours. Half
okay,
day.
there is plenty of evidence to
hour?
show that even at an 8-hour workday, if it say
Yeah.
somebody's in the office from 9 to 6,
Hmm.
that they only work 4 to 6 hours. Like
Yes.
every organization has hitters and sitters. So
Yep.
maybe
Yeah.
60% of people were sitters wherever they're sitting, whether it's on the couch or in the office.
Hmm.
But also, I just that 60% kind of number is maybe where people think that you don't like the workers so much.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I
I'm
mean,
just saying. I think
hitters
it
and sitters.
is a
It's true.
complicated. That's the world we live in. The power law, like the reason I am drawn to the power law as a principle of investing is
Yeah.
because the power law plays out in life constantly.
Constantly.
Like constantly. Not everybody is equally skilled, has an equal work ethic, has an like there are outliers in every scenario that you're going to encounter, and that includes work.
So, when we
I
look
just
at the
prefer
Pareto
to not
principle,
give
the
people
80
like
Yeah.
that assign their worth based on their work ethic. I think they're still probably all equally fine.
Well, here's what we're getting to in management. In an age of excess, aka low interest, money flowing, people just look at the top line number. Things are going in the same direction. We're not going to worry too much about this because everything's headed in the right direction. The money's flowing, stocks going up. Nobody cares. In a down market, everybody does a little self-examination. And everybody should just remember the 80-20 rule, the power law rule, Pareto principle in terms of efficiency. Yeah, I agree. 20% of people doing 80% of the work. So what happens always? So what happens in a down market is people look at it and go, okay, you know what? Pareto principle is true. Great. Let's find out who the 80%, if 20% are doing 80, right? Who's the 80 doing 20? And let's fire them. Or if we're not courageous enough to do the RIF, let's force them to come back to the office because 57% of people said they would quit their jobs, according to a recent study, if they were forced to come back to the office. There's a flex job survey. That's what's happening here.
I think that's happening. And I think that's the wrong call. Like if you're going to get rid of people, just get rid of them. And I understand look, I get it. Like I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a startup CEO and she was like, I'm kind of freaking stoked that we can finally tell people like, hey, actually, I need you to go ahead and do your job. Like I need you to not talk about, she was like, I'm thrilled that there is a downturn so that I can now. And I was like, I get it. Like it's because there are hitters and sitters. And then there are people who talk about their feelings all the time at work. And you're like, you know what? It's work. I don't want to, I'm a Gen Xer. Like, I don't want to talk about your feelings. Just do your work. All of that is true. But then trying to do a RIF by getting people to come back to the office means you're going to lose some of your 20%ers because they have been kicking ass at home and they are mad that you are telling them that they're not. And so to me, it's like, you know what? Suck it up and lay them off, Evan, and have fun at the basketball game.
Well, I bet you what they're doing is always in these situations, there is a little, of course, if you happen to be a hitter and you need additional flexibility, as Elon says, like, yeah, if your manager takes responsibility for you being a hitter and they put their, name on the line so you can work from home, sure. But it's on the manager then to say, okay, I'll make sure this person is in fact a hitter. But yeah, this is it's a new era and founders are just not going to be given the ability to run buck wild in terms of spending. They're going to be held accountable, even the billionaire ones, the billionaire class that ruled in this, age of excess are now being held accountable. And like, man, Evan Spiegel's net worth is down what? If he's 100% of his net worth's in that company. 99%. And if that company's down 80%, can you imagine you went from like being worth 10 billion and now you're worth 500 million? You're like, whoa, whoa, what happened? What happened? Like the guy from Peloton was, what was the original, what was it? John,
Foley.
John Foley. John Foley was probably worth like $10 billion and now he's worth like $100 million. Like, I know, like, for anybody who's not worth $100 million, this is like a holy cow, like $100 million is incredible. Sure. But man, you might have taken out 500 million in margin loans on your 10 billion and thought, I'm good. 5% of my margin loan. So
Peter Notenbaum, one of our noties, now he's selling rugs. Brutal.
He's a rug salesman. Oh my
He's
God.
a rug salesman.
You people are savages.
Just cold as ice. Cold as ice.
Yeah, now he's
I mean, listen, change is hard. Like, change is here and change is hard.
I'll tell you what's going to happen. These stocks
Nobody
are
likes
going to
it.
pop. I'm going to be J trading this through the holidays because I think now, like, everybody has given up that there's any way out of this mess.
Yeah.
We're in complete capitulation right now. And you know,
we need to be,
speaking of-
honestly, the sooner the better. Sell your Apple. What was it? Was it Buco Capital who was tweeting that? He was like, stop trying to pretend that this is all, sell it. Sell everything.
Yeah, sell your Apple so I could buy it. I'd like
only
to
way to
increase my
stop
Apple position.
Jay Powell.
Jay Pow. Pow.
You
He's like,
will
"Pow."
not be stopped until you roll over and show that white belly.
I'm
Show
not
it.
selling it. No, I'm not selling my Apple. I'm not selling my Amazon. No, I'm doubling down.
I'm not selling anything. You don't lose. You haven't lost anything until you sell.
Exactly. The comeback's coming. Speaking of a comeback that's not coming, speaking of pure
boy.
capitulation,
Oof.
I guess we have to talk about, and do we have to wrap on the
I
shell
feel like
game?
we like.
It's kind of
We're
fun.
gonna have-
tomorrow.
We're gonna
If-
have fun.
Yeah,
later.
so this ties into the Miami
we
nightclub
get to
story, which is funny.
Margaritaville.
Yeah, so you could run through the BlockFi stuff quick, and then
All right,
it's more about how like BlockFi is now suing Alameda
Yes.
because it's like this crazy runaround.
Yeah, no, the round tripping and
insane.
the shell game is so extraordinary. All right, Molly, I tried to understand this in our group chat. I know BlockFi filed for bankruptcy. I know Sam Bankman-Fried.
Good
is-
one.
Bankman
Did you
Fraud.
make that up? Amazing.
No, I stole it. I like all good things. It's like a Twitter, some reply guy. I'm all about the reply guys. I've decided I'm going to become a reply guy on Twitter. I'm no longer going to do my own
does that
primary
mean?
tweets. I'm just
You're
going to
just
be
gonna
like
reply.
dropping replies in. I'm going to be a reply guy. But some reply guy dropped the Sam Bankman-Fried.
That's funny.
Okay.
So, okay.
Explain to me this shell game because
I mean, I'm going to try to explain it. What I'm going to do first is read the tweet that I have been
Okay.
referring to as the Ouroboros tweet. Ouroboros, of course, the snake that eats its own head. So, tweets, ACO
I was looking that up as you were talking.
It's a really cool tattoo. It's not a good way to run a business. So BlockFi is a creditor to FTX that lent to Alameda, that lent to Emergent, which is a shell company owned by SBF that bought Robinhood shares that were pledged as collateral to guarantee to BlockFi the loan to FTX that was used to bail out BlockFi itself.
I need an aspirin.
Cricket.
Producer Nick, you got to keep that break in the show. All right, hold on. All right.
So
I know
basically,
there is.
BlockFi has declared bankruptcy because apparently none of that snake head eating situation worked out.
I just
or
want to.
whatever.
Okay, wait. You need to keep that tweet up for one more second here, just so I can explain how confused I am. BlockFi is a creditor to FTX. They have a claim against FTX, which has also gone bankrupt. So these are two bankrupt companies.
Yep.
BlockFi is saying they're a creditor to FTX. FTX lent to Alameda, their sister company, which was a
Mhm.
trading firm,
Right.
that lent to Emergent, which was a shell company.
Alameda
was
lent to
owned-
Emergent, which was a shell
Okay,
company.
Alameda lent to Emergent. Emergent is a shell company owned by SBF. So
Ah.
FBF owns both of these entities, including all three of these entities.
All three.
Including the shell. SBF bought Robinhood shares. I remember that. The shares went up. Thank you. He bought like 7-8% of Robinhood.
Mhm.
And those were pledged. Those Robinhood shares that SBF bought were pledged as collateral to guarantee BlockFi a loan to FTX.
So
But FTX
BlockFi,
used that loan to bail out BlockFi?
holy crap. Okay, so BlockFi got a loan, BlockFi loaned money to FTX, and then FTX was like, no problem, we're totally good for this. We put these Robinhood shares up as collateral, which pledging shares as collateral is a dangerous game because turns out the stock market goes both up and down, but okay. And then FTX got this loan from BlockFi and then turned around and used the loan from BlockFi to bail out BlockFi.
Hmm.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
Cool.
Sounds good. Sounds
So
good.
anyway, BlockFi went bankrupt. Not surprisingly,
Well,
I
you know,
guess.
congratulations.
And is now
to-
suing,
yeah.
by the way, Sam Bankman-Fried. That was the headline that started this whole, led to this tweet, which is the headline is that BlockFi just filed for bankruptcy on Monday and is now suing Sam Bankman-Fried for unpaid collateral. The collateral, of course, being the Robinhood shares.
Terra Luna,
Apparently.
3AC, Voyager, Celsius, FTX, and BlockFi, all of these are insolvent and or bankrupt today. All of those a year or two ago were the biggest geniuses in the world.
Yeah.
I just want to point out, like, you have to wonder where the money is in this. So where did the money go? Now, some of the money never existed because people were saying this money exists in this company, this company, this company, and this company, when it was in fact one instance of money.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the money was, here is 1 billion tokens that we value at $1 each. So there's $1 billion over here, but only that valuation was based on $10 million in tokens that had been bought. So 990 million of that actually never existed in the world. So there's multiple amounts of money that either were stolen, counted twice, or never existed to begin with because they were paper wealth.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to pause for a second and say, though, there was some money. There were
was
bag
some money.
holders, consumers, investors who actually put cash into these things, venture firms, all number of people bought into this group delusion that these tulips were worth something that they were never worth. There was no core value
Mm-hmm.
in the majority of this, the overwhelming majority of it. But I do know where some of the money went.
Do tell.
Bottle service in Miami. Because I was in Miami and I was watching some of these crypto kids. I went out with Sachs like at the tail end of remember that moment where we got the vaccines and then like the next 60 days, everybody's like, I got
Everyone
the vaccine.
Crazy. Yep.
There's COVID can't transmit. I'm a blocker. I can't ever get COVID because I'm double vaxxed. So Sachs and I go pop some bottles. We're hanging out, having a good time. And all these people are coming up to me, giving me glasses of champagne at this hot club in Miami. And what do? I'm in NFTs. I got a DAO. I got a token offering. I'm a crypto investor, ICO, IPO, blah, blah, blah. I got a marketplace. I got in early on Bitcoin. All of this money, I believe, can be found in the pockets of club promoters and bottle service. I don't mean to be sexist here, but waitresses, because I don't think I've ever seen a bottle service waiter. Bottle service servers.
I mean,
I think
there
they got
were
the money.
hardly any women in this industry, so I think we can assume that they were sending out the female servers.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, one of the quotes in this article about how Miami nightclubs are now feeling the pain. They're literally like, in the cottage industry collapse. Womp womp. Miami nightclubs are hurting because they became flooded with people who made all this money off of crypto. There were all these quotes that were just like, it was all these young men. Here we go. Quote, 95% men, young, with kind of a nerdy style. You wouldn't be able to tell they had a lot of money if they were just walking around. That's according to the former director of Groot Hospitality, Andrea Vermacati, which operates clubs like Live, Story, and Swan. So basically, all these young guys would roll in with all their crypto money. There was another incredible quote that was like, rich people don't usually show you their wallets, their literal wallets. She was like, but I've seen more crypto wallets over the last 2 years than I ever would have. People would just be like, check out my crypto wallet. Bring me some Dom.
There's a club called 11 that's spelled E11EVEN, I think. I've never been to it. I have been threatened to be dragged there many times. Every time I go to Miami, people come to 11, come to 11. I'm like, let me explain to you. I'm 52 as of yesterday. 50. I just say 50, and then if nobody's hearing, I say 2. That's my new process. 50.
I like it. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there's nothing that's happening at the club at 3, 4, or 5 a.m. that is more interesting to me than sleep.
Yes.
Full stop.
God, it's
Full
such
stop.
a good place to be at in life.
Listen, I have been to the greatest clubs at the peak of many bubbles, you know, like at the end of the millennium, century, whatever. And I was at Art Basel last year during all this craziness, and I was talking to Mike Beeple, Beeple, the NFT artist. And I said,
Oh,
listen,
yeah.
you are a real artist.
I already forgot all about people, but yeah.
Beeple's a real artist who makes stunningly beautiful art that people put into NFTs, but he also makes beautiful boxes with the art in it. Like I've seen these things that are gorgeous. I would buy a Beeple and put it on my wall. I'm not an art guy, but I would consider buying a Beeple as an artist. And he said, hey, well, what's your take, Jake Al? A big fan, blah, blah, blah. I said, anybody wants to buy any NFT with you, sell everything you got. One of 1,000, one of 10,000, one of 1,000,000. Just sell everything as fast as possible. Trees don't grow to the moon. This thing's going to be over soon. Sell everything. This was December of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, really? Hold on a second. He brought over somebody who works with me. He said, can you say that one more time to him? And I guess, they were, maybe being, I don't want to say precious, but they were being judicious about selling stuff, and holding stuff, like specifically NFTs. I was like, sell it all. Get it out the door. Get cash. Build up the cash reserves. You're an artist. You can always make more art. You got to Warhol this shit now.
Yeah.
If they want a Campbell soup, make 100, make 1,000. Until they stop wanting Marilyn Monroe, you're making them. Get them out the door and get that cash. Full stop. Anyway, according to the Financial Times, 11 started accepting cryptocurrency payments.
Yeah.
And they processed 6 million transactions last year. I hope they sold that crypto on the way.
Immediately.
As soon as it came in, they just processed it for cash. Now they say in the past 3 months, they've only processed less than 10,000.
Down 99%. Like crypto guys are gone. That money is gone. Hopefully they stack cash, those nightclubs.
Wait till we see the autopsies on these dead carcasses. Like when they cut the shark open and they find a license plate in it, like when they cut these things open, man, there is going to be some gnarly stuff in the belly of these defunct, dead crypto companies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
My favorite so far is FTX's bar tab. I don't know if you saw that.
This is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. It turns out that FTX, which is the story gift that never stops giving. Do we have our guys coming on tomorrow? We have the roundtable tomorrow? No, next Thursday.
Next week, but we can call him if you want an emergency.
No, let's let it build up. I can't talk about crypto every day of my life. It's just
exactly. We can let it build up.
I sound like a get off my lawn guy.
But the way the FTX story just keeps giving is unbelievable. And the latest nugget is just a teeny little nugget. It turns out that FTX does have a big outstanding debt, a $50,000 debt, which relatively speaking, not that much, but they it is owed to a Bahama-based Margaritaville.
Aww.
They have a $50,000 outstanding.
So wait, you're telling me that this kind of is on brand. These guys were on speed.
Babies, right? Out here having pina coladas and burgers.
They're in a Polycube. I mean, if you're on speed playing League of Legends, you're not going to drink like some Japanese whiskey. You're not drinking wine, from Italy.
You're not.
No,
even
you're drinking pina coladas. You're drinking a strawberry. What do they call a strawberry colada? Like these are the people who ordered
strawberry daiquiri.
They're ordering strawberry daiquiris. It's no offense, Molly, but the Polycube.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know.
Is gonna play some League of Legends. They're gonna get hopped up on some speed patches that their doctors gave them. They're gonna smash strawberry margaritas, daiquiris until their brains are frozen, and then they're going back and they're gonna trade some crypto at 2 a.m. 50 dimes in
50 dimes.
What is it? Unpaid. What does a daiquiri cost in the Bahamas?
This was
$6?
This was in the bankruptcy filings. Margaritaville, anyway. I'm going to say, is probably low on the list of creditors. I'm sorry.
You know John McDougall from FTX, formerly. You know John McDougall? No, from FTX?
Mm-mm.
Oh, here he is, by the way. This is a video they caught of him last week. He can't afford to go to the club anymore, but he met a girl at the game, at the basketball game. It's John McDougall.
I love this video so much.
This video is the greatest thing ever. It's like
is-
this, you know, stunning blonde.
She's gorgeous. If you have
She's
not, if you
gorgeous.
are not watching this video, first of all, you should be because we look amazing.
It's so great.
No,
so
but because this young man at a basketball game is trying to impress this gorgeous young woman with what appears to be his Costco gold card.
She's impressed.
It's a gold
She's like,
card.
Yeah,
Oh, what?
he's spitting. Like he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like,
He's
listen,
got his
me and
referee
you-
shirt on. He
like,
upgraded
listen.
to the gold card.
He's at an afternoon basketball game. He's like, listen, me and you after the game, we hit Costco. We get the, 24 pack of croissants. I'll also get, they have some really great mozzarella, and I'll make us some croissant pizzas. Come back to my place. We'll hit
Classy.
Costco. We'll split we'll get the croissants. We cut them in half. We put them in Ziploc bags. You freeze them, half of them, and then the other half you eat. But you got them as backups.
This is a thing.
Yeah, this is where we're at.
Where we're
This
at.
is where we're at, folks, in the cycle. Guys are trying to impress chicks with Costco cars. That's the point of the
At
cycle we're at.
At least,
That, by the way,
we've
that's
moved
not an
from-
FTX
we've
guy.
moved
I
from-
made that
that's
up.
not an FTX guy, by the
It's
way.
not an
That's a total
FTX
joke.
guy.
But yes, we've moved from showing off the Bitcoin wallet. This is how you know we're getting back to fundamentals because your crypto wallet is meaningless, but your Costco gold card, that's get you value.
All right, everybody. That's the show for today.
That's it. We
That's
did
a lot
it.
of show. It's a
Woo!
lot of show. What time is it? Is it 12? Okay, it's 12. All right, everybody.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, intro. Here we go. 3, 2. All right, everybody. It's a big show on a Tuesday. First up, we're going to talk about Twitter and Apple having a little Donnybrook, let's call it. And we're going to deep dive into the duopoly that Google and Apple have in the app stores. And one of the co-founders of Android became a reply guy. And let's talk about the history of the app stores, even a little Steve Jobs clip from the archives.
That is just a fun watch. We're also going to talk about, in this age of layoffs and RIFs and ways to get rid of employees that you just couldn't stop hiring less than a year ago, we're going to talk about Google's headcount, the insane efficiency that is YouTube in terms of revenue per employee, and Snapchat sending employees back to the office for 4 days a week starting next year.
The old gentleman's riff. And then we have some, and then a little crypto craziness talk, BlockFi's bankruptcy, and we pour one out for 11 and the end of crypto bottle service. It's going to be a great show.
Stick with us.
Good.
All right.
Thank you. No ad reads.
right.
You're good.
No ad reads.
Pour a little out for Margaritaville.
Pour one out. Thanks, Noties. We'll see
Thanks,
you
Noties.
all tomorrow.
Bye.